Every year, criminologists publish thousands of studies on a single question: why do people commit crime? Dozens of theories have been built to answer it. Some are a century old. Some were published last decade. They disagree with each other. They contradict each other. And yet every single one of them is supported by real data. This video will walk through the major theories one by one. And by the end, you will understand why none of them is the full answer and why all of them are necessary. We're going to move through these theories in order from the oldest to the newest. Each one will be explained on its own terms. Each one will be tested against what the research actually shows. No theory will be dismissed. No theory will be treated as final. That is how criminology actually works. The first theory is the oldest. It is called deterrence theory. It dates back to 1764. An Italian philosopher named Cesare Beccaria wrote a short essay called On Crimes and Punishments. He argued that people are rational. They weigh the costs and benefits of their actions. If the punishment for a crime is certain, swift, and proportionate, a rational person will choose not to commit it. Jeremy Bentham expanded on this idea 25 years later. He added that humans act to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Together, their work became the foundation of classical criminology. Deterrence theory identifies three variables: certainty, the likelihood of being caught; celerity, the speed of punishment; and severity, the harshness of the consequence. Research conducted across multiple decades has consistently found that certainty is the strongest deterrent. A 2023 empirical analysis of 41 police force areas in England and Wales confirmed that increased detection rates were linked to reduced theft and burglary. Severity alone, including longer prison sentences, showed limited effect on overall crime rates. Deterrence works, but it does not work for everyone, and the research shows exactly why. The next theory addresses that gap. It is called rational choice theory. It was formally developed by Derek Cornish and Ronald Clark in 1986. It builds on deterrence but adds a critical layer. It acknowledges that offenders do not make decisions with perfect information. They have limited knowledge. They act under time pressure. They are influenced by their immediate surroundings. Rational choice theory does not assume that criminals are perfectly logical. It assumes that they are making decisions based on what they perceive in the moment. A person considering a burglary does not run a complete risk analysis. They check whether the door is locked. They look for signs of someone being home. They assess how quickly they can leave. That is the decision model. It is bounded. It is situational. The theory has been extensively tested. It forms the basis of situational crime prevention, a field that has produced measurable reductions in specific types of crime through environmental design changes. The environment shapes the decision, but not everyone starts from the same place. That observation leads to the next theory: social disorganization theory. It was developed by Clifford Shaw and Henry McKay at the University of Chicago. They published their findings in 1942, based on research that began in 1929. Shaw mapped the residences of 60,000 young males who had been identified as truants or offenders in Chicago. He found that crime was not random. It was concentrated in specific neighborhoods, and when those neighborhoods changed populations, the crime rate stayed the same. The people were different, the rates were not. Shaw and McKay identified three conditions that produced this pattern: poverty, residential instability, and racial and ethnic heterogeneity. These conditions weakened the social ties that normally keep communities organized. Without those ties, informal social control collapsed. Schools, churches, and local businesses lost their ability to enforce shared norms. Crime filled the space. Robert Sampson and colleagues tested this theory in 1989 using national survey data from Great Britain. Their findings largely supported the original framework. Communities marked by poverty, mobility, and heterogeneity showed higher crime rates. And the mechanism was weak informal control. The neighborhood matters. But individuals within those neighborhoods are not all the same. That distinction is central to the next theory: strain theory. Robert King Merton introduced it in 1938. He argued that American society promotes a shared cultural goal, financial success, but it does not give everyone equal access to the legitimate means of achieving that goal: education, employment, social capital. For those without access, a gap opens. Merton called it strain. He identified 5 ways people adapt to that gap: conformity, innovation, ritualism, retreatism, and rebellion. Innovation is the adaptation most associated with crime. It is the decision to pursue the same goals through illegitimate means. Merton's theory was influential but narrow. It focused on economic crime among the lower class. In 1992, Robert Agnew expanded it into what is now called general strain theory. Agnew argued the strain is not only about blocked financial goals, it includes the loss of something valued, a job, a relationship, a sense of safety. It includes the imposition of negative experiences, bullying, discrimination, victimization. Agnew proposed that these experiences produce negative emotions, particularly anger, and that anger, under certain conditions, increases the likelihood of criminal behavior. General strain theory has been tested extensively. It has accumulated significant empirical support across multiple populations, crime types, and countries. Strain creates pressure. But pressure does not automatically produce crime. Here is where the pattern shifts. The theories we have covered so far focus primarily on why crime happens. The next set of theories focuses on how it is learned, how it is reinforced, and how society's response to it shapes what happens next. These are not replacements for the earlier theories. They are a different layer of explanation. Social learning theory is one of the most empirically supported frameworks in criminology. Edwin Sutherland introduced its predecessor, differential association theory, in 1947. He argued that criminal behavior is learned in the same way all behavior is learned, through interaction with other people. Specifically, through exposure to definitions that are favorable to law violation. If a person is exposed to more pro-criminal definitions than anti-criminal ones, they are more likely to offend. Robert Burgess and Ronald Akers refined this in 1966 by integrating principles from behavioral psychology. Akers added the concept of differential reinforcement. Crime is not just learned by exposure. It is reinforced when it produces rewards and is not adequately punished. Those rewards can be financial, they can be social, like approval from peers, they can be emotional. A meta-analysis reviewed by Pratt and colleagues in 2010 found strong support for differential association and social learning as predictors of criminal behavior across a wide range of studies. The theory holds, but it raises a question. Who decides what counts as deviant in the first place? That question is the foundation of labeling theory. Howard Becker published his book Outsiders in 1963. He argued that deviance is not a quality of an act. It is a consequence of how others respond to it. The same behavior can be treated as normal in one context and criminal in another. Becker identified the role of what he called moral entrepreneurs, individuals and institutions with social power that define which behaviors are unacceptable. Edwin Lemert had introduced a related framework earlier. In 1951, he distinguished between primary deviance and secondary deviance. Primary deviance is the initial act of rule breaking. It may go unnoticed. It may not change anything about how a person sees themselves. Secondary deviance is what happens after a person is labeled. They are treated differently by institutions. They lose access to conventional opportunities. They begin to internalize the label, and their behavior changes accordingly. Lemert's framework was later supported by the work of John Braithwaite on reintegrative shaming and Lawrence Sherman on defiance theory. Both showed that how a criminal justice system responds to an offender can either reduce or increase the likelihood of future crime. Labels change outcomes, but they do not explain why some people commit crime in the first place. The oldest explanation for that comes from biology. Biosocial criminology is an interdisciplinary field. It examines how biological and social factors interact to produce criminal behavior. Its modern form is rooted in the work of Adrian Raine, who began publishing neuroimaging research in the 1990s. A 1,997 study, conducted by Raine and colleagues, examined 41 violent murderers using brain scans. They found reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system compared to a non-criminal control group. A landmark study by Caspi and colleagues in 2002 identified an interaction between a specific gene, MAOA, and childhood maltreatment. Children who carried a particular variant of that gene and were also subjected to abuse were significantly more likely to develop antisocial behavior as adults. Children with the same gene variant but without maltreatment did not show the same pattern. This finding has been replicated and cited over 6,000 times. Biosocial criminology does not argue that biology determines crime. It argues that biology and environment operate together. Neither is sufficient on its own. A 1984 study by Mednick and colleagues found that adopted children's propensity for violent crime was associated with their biological parents' criminal history, even when raised in different environments. The interaction between the two is where the explanatory power lies. Biology is not destiny, but it is a factor, and the data shows that it is a real one. For the families and communities affected by crime, the distance between theory and lived experience remains significant. These frameworks do not erase harm. They do not resolve individual cases. They describe patterns, and patterns are what allow systems to respond. So why do so many theories exist, and why do they persist alongside each other? The answer is documented in the structure of criminology itself. Crime is not a single event produced by a single cause. It is a range of behaviors committed by different people in different places for different reasons under different conditions. Deterrence theory explains why some crimes are prevented. Rational choice theory explains how situational factors shape decisions in the moment. Social disorganization theory explains why certain neighborhoods produce more crime than others, regardless of who lives there. Strain theory explains how social pressure creates motivation. Social learning theory explains how criminal behavior is acquired and maintained through interaction. Labeling theory explains how institutional responses can reinforce or reduce reoffending. Biosocial criminology explains why two people in identical environments can develop along different trajectories. No single theory accounts for all of these dimensions. That is not a failure of criminology. It is a reflection of the complexity of the subject. Criminologists have spent decades testing each of these frameworks against real data. Each one has survived that process. Each one has been revised in response to evidence. Deterrence theory was refined when research showed that certainty matters more than severity. Strain theory was expanded when Agnew demonstrated that economic frustration is not the only source of criminal motivation. Social learning theory was strengthened when meta-analyses confirmed its predictive power across dozens of studies. Biosocial criminology was transformed when neuroimaging technology made it possible to observe brain structure and function directly. The field is not static. It moves in response to what the evidence shows, and the evidence consistently points in one direction. Crime is produced by multiple causes operating at multiple levels. Simultaneously, understanding it requires multiple frameworks. That is not a weakness. It is the only accurate way to describe what is actually happening.